Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Exporting Inventory from Sync on Set Crew Tools into AssetHub. My name is Natalie, and I am on the marketing team here at Entertainment Partners, and I have with me my colleague Savannah from our account management team, who will be leading you through today's tutorial. Now let's take a quick look at what we are going to cover in today's webinar. Today's webinar is designed for any crew who handle reconciling their department's physical assets. And today we are going to cover exporting inventory from Sync on Set Crew Tools into AssetHub. This will include matching transactions and converting inventory into assets. And as always, we'll leave you with some best practices to help you with your AssetHub efficiencies. Now, while Savannah is going to be walking you through the demo today, I am going to be monitoring the Q&A for any submitted questions, so please feel free to write in with questions as you think of them throughout the webinar. You can submit questions by clicking the Q&A that you should see in your Zoom menu bar. It should be at the bottom of your screen, and we will take some time after the demo today to answer your questions. Following today's webinar, we are going to send you some resources, and this is going to include a recording of the webinar, as well as a link to the Sync on Set support site, which is where you can find all of our help articles, which are related to both Sync on Set Crew Tools and to AssetHub. You can also find recordings of our past webinars, and we will also send you a link to the productioncommunity.com, where you can find the Entertainment Partners Master Series, which cover topics on the business of production and production technology, such as Crew Tools and AssetHub. They also have a community forum and much, much more, so we definitely recommend that you check that out. All right, and with that, I am going to pass things over to Savannah, and let's go ahead and get started with today's demo. Good morning, Savvy.
Good morning. Thanks so much, Natalie, and welcome everyone. Today, we will be covering exporting from Crew Tools over into AssetHub. So to start off, we will begin in Crew Tools and we'll take a look at the inventory index in there. Then we'll go over how to export that inventory. And then once we are in AssetHub, we'll have two options. We can either match that inventory to transactions, or we can accept that Sync on Set Crew Tools inventory as an asset. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and walk you through this process. Just give me a moment here to share my screen and I will be right back with you. All right, everyone. So hopefully you can see my screen now. You'll notice that I am in Sync on Set Crew Tools and that I'm in a Silicon Valley sample production. So just a quick disclaimer here, there's no need to worry about the data in this. This is just a fake sample production with no real information. Okay, so I'm assuming that most of you are probably familiar with Crew Tools if you're in this webinar. So instead of going over all the basics, we're going to jump straight into the inventory tab. So you'll work your way over to this inventory button in the horizontal navigation bar, and you'll click into here, and you'll land in the inventory index. So now it's important to note that when you're exporting inventory from Crew Tools to AssetHub, you want to make sure you're selected into the correct episode and department. If you are moving it from a series into AssetHub, you'll be able to select an episode. For features, you can just disregard that. But you do want to make sure you're selected into the correct department. So the departments that are able to transfer inventory from Crew Tools to AssetHub will be the costume department, the set deck department, and the property department. Hair and makeup, of course, still might have assets, but those won't be tracked as inventory in Crew Tools. So for today, we're just going to work from the prop department. They all work the same exact way. So if you are in set deck or costumes, rest assured that the process is exactly the same, okay? So once I've done that, I'm going to land on this inventory index. Now you'll notice that there are some checkboxes in line with each of the inventory items. So you'll want to go ahead and select the inventory that you'd like to transfer over to AssetHub. So I'm going to go ahead and select this starter's pistol, some classic American shorts, and then some dictionaries. Now, if you have photos added in or any additional information, some of that information will transfer over to AssetHub. So specifically, the name will transfer, of course, the cost, the description, any photos, brand, color, quantity, vendor, wrap box, and payment method will all export into AssetHub. So for today, I'm just going to use these 3 pieces of inventory. It is important to note that you typically want to do this at the end of wrap because you can only export your inventory once from CrewTools to AssetHub. You can do multiple exports, but you can only export one piece of inventory once. So if you add in additional information to CrewTools, you won't be then able to come back and export additional information. So again, we just recommend doing it at wrap, and that way you'll have the most up-to-date version of the inventory that you can then just move over right into AssetHub. So again, we've selected the inventory that we'd like to export. So then I'm going to come up to this little horizontal ellipses. I'll click that. I'm going to select the export button. And then you'll notice it says to AssetHub. So I'm going to go ahead and export it directly to AssetHub by clicking that. You'll get a pop-up notification that lets you know you're about to export 3 pieces of inventory. And it will ask you if you want to include continuity photos as well as establishing photos. So I know we don't have any added in for right now. I'm just going to select them, to show you what that looks like, and then hit export. Awesome. So you'll see this little green pop-up that says you've successfully exported 3 pieces of inventory. Now, we want to jump over into AssetHub quickly to look at those inventory items. So we'll come up to this product switcher in the upper left-hand corner, where my mouse is, where it says continuity. And you'll notice that there is an option to jump right into AssetHub from CrewTools. Now, a quick note here, when you get started with CrewTools, if you know that you're using AssetHub, please reach out to your account manager and they will link your CrewTools account and your AssetHub account. So that way you can just switch between the 2 products by using our product switcher. Okay, so I'm going to jump into AssetHub by clicking it, and we'll give it a second to load here. Okay, so you'll notice now that we're in AssetHub, of course, and we are specifically in the asset index. You can see that the assets tab is selected. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll just see a little reminder about the studio you're in, as well as the project that you're working in. So you can see I'm in the Silicon Valley sample production. I'm in the asset index. Now you might be wondering where those assets are. So instead of being in the asset index, or in the asset tab in this horizontal navigation bar, we want to be in the for review tab. So if I select that for review tab, this will show me all of the inventory that's been exported from CrewTools. So you'll see that starter's pistol, the classic American shorts, as well as those dictionaries, okay? You'll also notice that it says there is some data missing. That's just a quick indicator that you need to add more information before you can turn it into an asset within AssetHub. So each studio for AssetHub has different requirements. Almost all studios require that before an asset can be created, it needs to have a disposition, which is like a status. So this data missing indicator will just tell you that you need to add in a little bit more information depending on your studio's requirements. Okay, so there are 2 options for how we want to handle this inventory. We can either match it with a transaction. Now these transactions come in off of accounting's ledger, or we can just accept these inventory items as assets themselves without matching it to a transaction. So you'll want to check to see how your project is using AssetHub. You'll either be working from the transactions tab, again, which are items that came in from accounting's ledger, or you will just be adding these assets directly to the asset index and you will not be using those ledgers from accounting. So for today, I'm going to go over both options and I'm going to start with matching it to a transaction in the transaction index. So of course, we'll want to jump over to the transaction index. I'm going to click on that to the right of assets. Okay, awesome. So now we are in the transaction index. I want to make sure I'm in the property department. So I'm going to go into the department column and scroll down to select props. Now I'll be looking at all of the property assets that came in from accounting's ledger. So let's go ahead and work with this English-Spanish dictionaries, okay? Because I know that I exported some dictionaries from Crew Tools inventory. What I'm going to do is I will select this item or items, and you'll notice that there are three options. You can either create a new asset from this transaction, or you can match to an existing asset, or lastly, you can match to SyncOnSet Crew Tools inventory. So that's what I want to do today. I'm going to go ahead and select match to SyncOnSet Crew Tools inventory, and it's going to take me to a list of all of the inventory that was exported into AssetHub from Crew Tools. So I'll go ahead and select that. Give it a second to load. And you'll see all of the inventory that I exported from Crew Tools. You'll go ahead and select the item that you would like to match it with. And after you do that, you'll see that this match button illuminates. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And we've just matched that transaction to that Crew Tools inventory, and it will now live in the Assets tab. Okay, so that's the first way of handling those imported items from Crew Tools. You can match it with a transaction. Now, the other option is to go back to the Assets tab, and we're going to go back into that For Review tab. Give it a second to load here. And let's take a look at these classic American shorts, okay? So there's some data missing, so I want to go ahead and select this item, and I want to click the Add Update button. Because I know that the studio requires a disposition be added in, I'll go ahead and select Add/Update, and I'm going to add in that disposition. Once I do that, I can select from the disposition dropdown. Let's just go ahead and say that this was an approved sale. I'll hit save and then confirm. And once I do that, give it a second to load, you'll notice that that disposition has been added and now the status has switched to ready to go. And that means I can just turn this specific inventory item directly into an asset. And to do that, I would select the item again, and I would go ahead and select Add/Update and click Accept Assets. You'll get a notification that that asset has been created. You'll go ahead and hit OK. And now when you go back to the Assets tab, you'll be able to find that specific inventory item. Okay? So those are the two ways that you can handle exporting Crew Tools inventory directly into AssetHub. Again, just for review, you can match it to a transaction, or you can accept that inventory directly as an asset. Okay, so that concludes the demo portion of today's webinar. I'm going to jump back to the slideshow and go over some best practices. Okay, thanks, Natalie. So best practices. You'll want to make sure that you check in with your account manager to ensure that Crew Tools and AssetHub projects are linked. Typically, this happens at the beginning of a production, but if on the chance that you're in Crew Tools and you don't see AssetHub as an option, please reach out to your account manager and they'll go ahead and link those accounts. Okay. Next, you want to make sure you export your items at the end of wrap. Because this can only be done once, you want to make sure that all of the information is added into Crew Tools before you export it into AssetHub. You'll also want to make sure you accept your inventory directly as an asset or match it with those transactions in the transaction index. You don't want to just leave it waiting in that for review tab because it is not complete. Okay. And last but not least, you'll want to make sure you bookmark the Help Center at support.synconset.com.
All right, thank you so much for that demo, Savvy, and thank you, everyone. It looks like we have gotten a couple of questions. So before we start the Q&A portion of the webinar, we just want to give you a last chance to finish up writing any questions that you may have. And while you're doing that, we do want you to know that we will get to as many questions as we can, but if your question does not get answered, please don't worry. We are sending out the recording as well as some additional information following the webinar, so we may get to you by email if we run out of time. Okay, Savvy, so it does look like we have a couple of questions who have already been submitted, so why don't we go ahead and start with those.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Natalie. So I see a couple questions in here. So the first one says, can you match for review items to an existing asset in AssetHub if you've already changed your transaction into an asset? That's a great question. Unfortunately, right now, you can't match the for review items to an existing asset. What you can do, however, is you can accept it as an asset, and then you can go ahead and merge those two assets together. So that's the workaround for right now. Hopefully we'll be able to get that going in the future. Okay, so it looks like we have another one here. It says, can you show us how to add a transaction from the accounting ledger? I have not added inventory into SyncOnSet. Okay, so that's a great question as well. And that's something that is done with the accounting team on a project. So once an AssetHub project gets started, your account manager will coordinate with the accounting team, and the accounting team will send over those ledgers to be uploaded by your account manager into AssetHub. From there, you'll be added into AssetHub and you'll be able to view those transactions directly. And those transactions, again, are all determined by accounting. So they'll export their complete list from their accounting software. And that comes over to us as an Excel file that we then upload. And then it is added into AssetHub, as you saw from my transaction index that I was showing you. It will look the same exact way for you when you log in to view the transactions in your specific department. Okay, let's go ahead and check out the next question. Okay, so let me see. We have a bunch coming in. Give me 1 second. So someone asked, can I transfer items from the hair and makeup department to AssetHub? At the moment, you cannot do that. Transferring items from Crew Tools to AssetHub is reserved for departments that have inventory in Crew Tools. Okay, let's go ahead and do one more. Can I transfer from AssetHub to Crew Tools? This is another great question, and one that we actually get a surprising amount. So exporting from SyncOnSet Crew Tools to AssetHub is one way, and it's final. Once an item is exported, it cannot be exported again. Okay, so as a result, please ensure that the items you are exporting have as much data entered as possible. Any changes made to items in SyncOnSet Crew Tools after they have been exported will not carry over to AssetHub. Okay, so just to reiterate, it is not a kind of bi-directional transfer of inventory. It can only go from Crew Tools to AssetHub. Okay, so it looks like those are all of the questions that we've gotten so far. So I will hand it back to Natalie. And if we didn't get to your question, we will get to it later. So Natalie can go over that.
All right, thank you so much, Savvy. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions for us this morning. As Savvy mentioned, if we didn't get to your question, or if you think of anything outside of today's webinar, please know that you can always reach out to us. You can do this via quite a few different ways, so we just want to take a quick look at those. First is that when you are logged into the site, you will see the little blue chat bubble in the lower right-hand corner of the screen. You can click on that chat bubble at any time and you can contact our support team. They They are available Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you click that bubble outside of those hours, they will get back to you once our support hours resume. You can also email our support team at support@synconcept.com. Or if you'd like to give us a phone call, you can go ahead and give us a call as well. Again, our hours are Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Outside of those hours, or if you would just like to take a look at any more of our resources, you are always welcome to head over to our support site, which is support.synconcept.com. And again, there we have all of our help articles, recordings of our past webinars, and you can also get in touch with our support team. So we have a lot of really great resources for you, and we hope that you take advantage of them. We would like to again thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and thank you to Sabby for walking us through all of that demo and answering our questions. We hope that this was an informative session for you and that AssetHub, creating assets in AssetHub is a little bit easier. If you could please take a few moments following today's webinar, we do have a short feedback survey and we would love to know how we did. And if there are anything that you would like to see in a future webinar, please make sure to leave us a note. We hope that you all stay safe and healthy, and thank you for joining us. We hope to see you at our next webinar.